Hey guys, this is Dr. Pauly. Right now I'm creating a kind of a refresher video. I'm concentrating right now on what we've covered up to this point in Lesson 2. This is to help some of you get up to speed and also as a review for some of you. Now with all of my units, all my modules here, you need to make sure you do all the reading. I don't just post it up there just to be posting it. All of this contains information that we're going to be using later on. If you skip straight to an assignment, you're probably going to end up lost. So make sure that you go through all of my reading. Right now we're doing building the user interface with HTML5. We're just building the backbones or the basic of a web page using HTML up to this point. I've got some reading here about understanding what HTML is, explaining attributes and elements, and also absolute and relative paths for links. Now, if you want a perfect example of absolute versus relative links, take this second unit, second thing right here in your reading, and you'll find out that it doesn't really work. That's because I referenced a Microsoft resource on their website. And if you ever reference something on another person's website, you have to use an absolute link. Well, the problem is with an absolute link is that if they ever rename or move it, then all you get is broken links, such as this right here. Now, a relative link applies just to your website, so you can have all your stuff set up using relative links and not have to use absolute links. And so it's a lot more flexible actually. So I could take my entire website, move it to a different domain, and I wouldn't have to like reorganize a lot of my links and stuff like that. But that's kind of getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go ahead and look at the basics of HTML. Here I've got some links specifically to HTML headings, paragraphs, and formatting. And then I'm going to cover creating a blank document and format and nesting. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Notepad++, which is right here. And I'm going to go ahead, and some of my top menu parts cut off in this recording, so you'll just have to kind of bear with me. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and say new document. Now I have mine set up automatically to create an HTML document. If you'll notice down here in the bottom it says hypertext markup language file. Now if you don't have that set up, you need to go back and look at my my step-by-step install part and the setup for Notepad++. But if you don't want to go through that, you can always go to, as soon as you open one, just go to language and go to H and HTML. You'll notice mine's already selected, and that'll go ahead and save it, get it ready for the HTML format. So first thing I want to talk about is creating a blank document. Now in HTML5, your blank documents, your blank documents, stop that, always start off with a doc type declaration. Now what a doc type declaration is simply telling the computer that this is going to be an HTML document and to treat it as such. That's what's necessary for it to start, to open it with browsers, to make sure that it's going to be treated as an HTML document, not like some notepad or a text document or something like that. That first line is very important. It declares that this is a HTML document. Now the next line we're going to start off go with is our HTML tag, and all this says is that listen, from this point on, read the entire document as if it were HTML markup. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and put an attribute to this. I'm going to use the language attribute, and every attribute has a value, and I'm going to make it EN, which stands for English. Okay. This is just a little something on the that you can start adding to your stuff later on. This is important because browsers now know that this is obviously going to be written in English, and to look at everything from an English dictionary. So we've created the HTML tag, and if you want to, we can go ahead and go all the way down here a little bit. It doesn't matter how far, and we'll close that tag. So anything in between the opening tag here and the closing tag here will be read as HTML. So this is the main container for our code right now, or our scripting language, as it were, is between the HTML tags. And I'll just hit back. Okay. So every document is divided into two parts. Okay. I've got the head, and I'm just going to go down a little bit, and I'm going to close the head. And then I've got the body of a document. I'll just go all the way down here and close the body as such. So what happens is that things typically in the head of a document, think of it like a header in a Word document, except that most stuff that goes in this head isn't really seen on the web, on the actual web page itself. This is behind the scenes stuff, okay, for the most part. And one of the first things that we're going to do in this head is we're going to hit, I'll go ahead and put a hierarchy in here as I go, and I'm going to create a title for my document, and I will call this I could call it anything, but let's call it review, and I'll close my tag. Okay, it's always important, and that's one of my common typos, so you're going to see that a lot. You know, it's always important to go ahead and close your tags. Okay, so this is the opening tag, this is a closing tag, the tag is title. In between the two tags is the contents. Okay, so right now if I were to save this and run it, besides from getting some general errors, review would be read on the tab in the browser. It would say review, and that would be the title of my document. So again, opening tag and closing tag, and in between is the contents. Alright. Now there are also tags that are basically self-closing, or they call them empty tags. And one of those is the meta tag. Now the meta tag is, meta means data about data. Okay, this is basically, you know, digging down deep and explaining the data that you're putting in there. So in this case, I'm using the meta tag, and I'm going to use the character set, okay, attribute, and I'm going to assign it a value of UTF-8. Now UTF-8 is probably, as of right now, the most common character map used in HTML. And what a character map is basically just like it sounds. If you broke it down in the simplest terms, it's a huge table. And if you broke it down into binary, the first 4 bits would be on the columns, and then the next 4 bits would be on the rows, or vice versa. I forget exactly how those go together. But anyways, to simplify this, it's just a huge map, and where every set of numbers equals a specific character. Okay? And if you've ever been on a website, let's say you've gone to a Chinese website or something like that, and all you get's a bunch of wingdings and squares and stuff like that, that's because, one, they didn't declare what character map they were using when they coded it. And so your browser automatically tries to use this default character map, and if some of those characters don't match up, or they don't exist in your character map that your browser is using, then it will just replace them with something. Okay, and so that's why you get those weird displays, especially if you look like, you know, in like a Chinese, especially if you go to Chinese websites and they don't have it marked up right, then you'll see that happening. So it's always important to go ahead and declare what character set you're using. UTF-8 is pretty universal for most languages. Now, I could do more meta tags, but for right now, this would pass a validator. Okay, now a validator doesn't mean that you've coded it right. The validator simply says that you've not made any grievous syntax errors or something like that in there. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit and bring the head up. And now we're going to talk about the body. Now the body is where you're going to see everything you want to see. Okay, and in the body I'm going to start off with a paragraph tag. Okay, now the interesting part in HTML5 is technically you don't have to close paragraph tags. I do. It's kind of a carryover from the old days. It doesn't, say that you can't, but it's just one of those habits that's hard to beat if you've been doing this for a while. So I'm going to say that this is my first paragraph. Okay, this is my first paragraph. I'll put a period on it. Obviously, there should be more to it. And again, I'll close my paragraph because I'm old school that way. And I'll go ahead and create a second paragraph. And of course, cleverly say this is my second paragraph. Okay. Such as that. Now, the reason I like to do this this way is because, sorry about that, my 3-year-old doesn't want to go to sleep. Alright, so anyways, we talked about the basics of a web page up to this point. This is the declaration. This HTML tag says listen, anything between the HTML tags is to be read as HTML. A document is divided into two parts, the head and the body, and notice that they're both closed. Okay, and anything in between is a child of the parent tag. This is also known as nesting. For another example of nesting right here, I'm going to go ahead and put the emphasis tag on the word this. And so I'll open up emphasis before, and then I will close the emphasis tag. And HTML is pretty simple if you want to read it. It says, listen, this is a paragraph. Okay, so until this paragraph tag is closed, everything will be treated as a paragraph. Then I said, oh, okay, now there's an emphasis tag, and anything up until the emphasis tag is closed will be emphasized. So you'll notice I have emphasis here. I've selected this bit of content, and then I closed that emphasis tag right there. So it's still treated as a paragraph, and only the word this is treated as emphasized. And you can do all kinds of other things. I'm going to go ahead and use italics, which is kind of slightly deprecated to an extent, but there is a difference between italicized and I believe it's emphasis. It's the same thing. It's been a while. I'm I gotta practice this some more. I've been doing Python and Java lately, and so again, everything's going to be treated as a paragraph. Everything until this tag is closed is going to be treated as emphasis and paragraph. So the word this is treated as emphasized and paragraph, and then I'm going to stop using emphasize. So is and my is still treated as a paragraph. Then I'm going to start adding the italicized, and so the word first is treated as italicized and still in the paragraph. Then I close italicized, and so the word paragraph is still treated as a paragraph. And that's how that runs. So doctype HTML is my declaration. HTML language English, this is an attribute and its value right here. It's always attribute equals and values in quotes if you're going to use attributes. And if you are worried that you don't know a lot of attributes, it's if you follow those links that I provided in your reading, there'll be a lot of attributes as they relate to specific tags and stuff like this. Some attributes are pretty universal. Others are only tag specific. Okay. And you know, you don't have to memorize them all. You'll use them as we get to them. Okay. But if I got rid of all of this stuff right here, this is a blank document. And if you look at it, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines of code, and you've got a blank document with nothing displayed except for the title up on the tab. Okay. I've added this content into the body to see it. I'm going to save it real quick. Now, when you save it, I'll just save it to my desktop here. When you save it, make sure it's save type as HTML. If you switched your language, it should already be here. Do not save it as a document or a plain text or anything like that. It has to be saved like this. And I'll just call this one test. Oops, sorry. Hit my microphone. So I'm going to call it test, and I'm going to save it to my desktop. Now, it has to be saved before it can run, okay? And in order to run it, I'm going to move this up a little bit so you can see. In order to run it, I'm going to go to Run, and we use Chrome. The shortcut is Control-Alt-Shift-R, which is just, to me, it's quicker just to hit Run and launch in Chrome. And I've launched this in Chrome. Let me pull it over here and show you. It says, this is my first paragraph. Notice the emphasized and italicized. They look the same, but if you get down to the metadata, they're actually treated differently by browsers and these things called web crawlers, which websites use to index content, such as Google will use crawlers to index content for their search engine and stuff. And as you can see up here, there's the title of the document called Review. And all it has is this is my first paragraph and this is my second paragraph. Later on, we'll go more into specifics. If you guys have any specific questions, like, hey, can you do a video on nesting and stuff like that, a little bit more in detail, all you have to do is ask me, and I'll record as much as I can for you guys. Again, a perfect example of nesting, the emphasis tag is nested within the paragraph tag. The italicized tag is also nested within the paragraph tag. And you can nest things further because, you know, if you think about the paragraph tag is nested within the body tag. Okay? Alright, see how that works? And technically, if I was going to really do this correct, I get lazy sometimes, but my stuff should look like this. And if you notice, all of the head and the body is nested within the HTML tag. And so, you know, you can see it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper as I go. And I can emphasize this, and let's go ahead and do bold as well. Okay, so now it's going to be italicized and bolded. Now listen, if it was the first tag here, it's the last tag to close here. Okay, so if I was going to emphasize and bold something, if I started with emphasize and then I went bold, then I need to close the bold first and then close the emphasized. Technically, they'll work either way, but it's just good habit to go ahead and, as you open tags, make sure you close them in the opposite order like that. If you notice, paragraph's the first thing that was created, the open tag, and then the closing tag is the last thing here for it. Alright, so again, I'm going to save it. I'm going to go to Run, launching Chrome. Again, make sure it's saved or it won't launch. And you'll notice this is emphasized and bolded. Okay, the word this is. Alright, I think that should get most of you caught up to where we are. Again, do not skip the reading. Alright, I'm not just, you know, putting stuff up there just to take up space. All of this stuff is useful. If you want to look at understanding HTML, okay, so I've got a broken image there, but I've broke it down for you. Opening tag, closing tag. The whole thing is called an element. This is called the content. See, this is the content. So I broke that down for you. I talked about nesting right here. There's a paragraph with italicized here. And within the italicized, I've nested a bold here for Dr. Polly. And then I close the bold, and I close the italicized. And then when I'm done with the paragraph, I close the paragraph. And this is what it looks like right here. And if I had won the lottery, I'm sorry to say, I probably wouldn't be making videos right now. All right. And I even broke it down in what I call the common tongue. So begin paragraph markup. Can you mark everything as italic as well? Believe that. Mark everything as bold as well. So it's italicized and bold. And you can read. All right. Talk about attributes here. Remember, it's a value is always in quotes. So it's attribute equals value, and value is always going to be in quotes. Okay. Anything else? I think real quick, no. Entities are special characters. Again, here I'll talk about the UTF-8. If you want to look at UTF-8, I've got a link right there. Okay, stuff like that. So this stuff is important to read. It's not just something to to skip, because this explains 90% of what I just did this video on. Okay, so it's always there for you. Alright, I'm going to close this out right now, and if you guys have any questions or concerns or very specific questions, please shoot me an email at pauled@TennesseeOnlinePublicSchool.org. I get that faster than I do just my Gmail inbox. I mean, not my Gmail inbox, but my Canvas inbox. I'm currently working on 3 versions of Canvas for 3 different systems. So sometimes it's just easier to grab me by sending me an email. All my contact information is right here on the home page. Right here, pauly@TennesseeOnlinePublicSchool.org. Okay, there's the standard attendance policies and etc. There's the grading scale, and here's the general course outline, which of course if you click it will take you straight to the Unit 2, such as this. Okay. Later on, you're going to be talking about new and deprecated elements, and real quick, deprecated elements are kind of, like I explained it with $100 bills here, This dollar bill would still work, but we don't technically use them anymore. And the same thing for this one, and this is the newer one. So these two right here are technically deprecated. It doesn't mean they don't work, it's just that they're not used anymore. Okay? And so what happens is these are eventually going to be taken out of circulation. Alright? And this is the new one that everybody should be using. Should be. But that doesn't mean that people won't accept these. Does it make sense? On deprecated. So it's not necessarily no longer used, it's just being phased out. Alright. Okay, we'll talk about fig caption and stuff like that later. The canvas element and scalable vector graphics. These two, really you need to pay attention to what I've written here, and I explain it for you as well. And I've also got some videos here that you might want to you need to pay attention to actually, that I've already created for SVGs and stuff like that. Alright? Alright. If there's, like I said, anything else, shoot me an email.